Today I would like to talk about fairy tales again. This time I would like to share something from the Tibetan tradition. It says that in Tibet it was custom that grandmothers and grandfathers told endless fairy tales in the evenings while the family was listening to them. This way the tradition has been passed down from one generation to the next. Till today, I've been told that fairy tales are shared by herds families, villages, broader communities, and they even have competitions among them. In the past, they also had professional storytellers who received donations for telling the stories of fairy tales. But this is actually a declining tradition. Therefore, Norbu Shopal, Tibetan, and the Library of Tibetan Works and Archive compiled and wrote down Tibet's rich oral folk literature to support its preservation and to support the dissemination of this aspect of Tibetan culture. One book is here right now. When I'm sure when Madame, she brought that back from India, and I caught it immediately. So normally these folk or fairy tales have been transmitted orally. And so the compiler Norbu Shapor, he made the effort to go to Mount God, for example, and asked the elders to share what they can remember. Unfortunately, many couldn't remember anymore properly or just parts of it. But some stories have been retained. There are more out there, but he says, and I don't know what's true, many have been changed, especially when they came to the West, they have been added, and our culture has been influenced in how they tell the stories, more description of landscapes and such, what the Tibetans don't naturally have. Unfortunately, then these fairy tales are about princesses and dogs and foxes and frogs and witches and magicians and humans, how they interact with each other, especially the fairy tales telling stories about communications between men and animals. So why I'm personally interested in fairy tales? The German style, of course, I grew up with them, and I want to understand them in a different way and want to see them in a different way than they have been taught. But in the context of Tibetan fairy or folk tales, I'm interested, I love to relax my mind. And with something that is warming my heart, something that nourishes my belief in goodness, that gives me a sense of connection and well-being. And I'm also interested to learn how Buddhism, or how His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says, my religion is kindness, how Buddhism or kindness is transferred into society, into everyday's life, in families, communities, and art culture. So what I found from my short exploration of these fairy tales is that they have two deeper meaning in them. And they may not be understood immediately, but thinking about them, you will find richness. What I especially found is that many of these fairy tales, Tibetan fairy tales, have thriving stories of loving kindness, warm-heartedness. And there may be all kinds of challenges along the way for the poor, the mighty, those born in lower realms. But as long as they remained kind, warm-hearted, they found their way to genuine peace and happiness. So some fairy tales, folk tales, refer straight away to Buddhism, such as the story The Witch and Her Son that I will share today. The Witch and Her Son. There was a place called Akaki, and there lived a woman by the name of Gomaki. She had a son called Guru Shovang. The woman was a witch, not an ordinary witch, but a ferocious and evil one. She was totally blind to the Dharma and could never rouse herself to utter a single word of prayer. Queer it is that such a fiendish woman should have an incarnate son. He had earned enough merit in his past lives to be born a bodhisattva in this life, and was born to this woman to show her the path of religion. So here he was, born to this witch to lead her onto the path of Buddha Dharma. He tried every method he could think of to teach her the Buddha Dharma, or at least to utter a few words of prayer and lift her out of her total ignorance. He told her to recite the 6-syllable mantra, or Mani Padme Hung, every day, every time a bell rang. For this reason, he tied barrels onto her bag of woolen yarn, on the doorsteps, to the top of the door, and onto her blankets. This way, he thought she could not possibly forget his advice. He would make her remember to say the mantra. But the witch was a witch. She could be nothing better. She was not interested in saying mantras, and every time a bell rang, she had a crazy, uncomfortable feeling. She stuffed ash and cloth into the bells on the door so they would not ring, but she could do nothing about the bells on the yarn bag or the blankets. So every time these bells rang, she said, "Om Mani Padme Hung," the venom of San Guru Shavang. This is the way she said the mantra. Whenever the bells rang, she added dreadful words to it. She took the mantra not as an instrument to earn merit, but as a burden, the uttering of which was a waste of time and energy. Not long afterwards, the witch Gomanki died. Guru Shavang was never sad nor happy at her death. He was not happy because no matter how bad she was his own mother, whom she had been unable to raise from her ignorance. And he was not sad because he knew that the longer she lived, the more demerits or unvirtues she would accumulate. He went to an astrologer to find out where she would be reborn, and was told that she would be reborn as a scorpion under the hearth of the fireplace of the local monastery. He was very eager to find her, to be near her, and liberate her from under the hearth. But when he sought the permission of the chief abbot, he was not allowed to dismantle the fireplace. The only way to be near her, even so he could not see her, was to work in the monastery. So he worked as a water carrier of the monastery. For 9 long years he lived near his mother and worked very hard. But he could not do anything to see her or liberate her. When his efforts bore no fruit, even after 9 years, he lost hope and sought leave from his work, but was denied. He was told that he would be paid for his services and was requested to stay on. There he found a means to bargain. Instead of accepting money for his work, he begged the abbot to allow him to dismantle the fireplace to enable him to find his sinful mother, and he promised to build a new one in its place. His request was granted. The fireplace was so big that it took him 3 years to dismantle it. Alas, during the 3 years the scorpion had died, and all his labor was in vain, and it took him another 3 years to rebuild it. Then he went to the astrologer again to find out about his mother's next life. He was told that she had taken rebirth as a donkey of a rich merchant in Lhasa. So he ran away from the monastery and went to Lhasa and asked the merchant to hire him as his donkey boy. He said he would ask for no payment but food and shelter. The merchant was not only able to hire a sheep hand, but he found the boy cheerful and honest too. While in the service of the merchant, he treated the donkey with compassion and prayed for the swift fulfillment of its present life and a better rebirth. After 3 years, the donkey died and was soon reborn as a human being. Bodhisattva Guru Shavang's mission was completed, and he met his mother once again in the human form. This story, The Witch and Her Son, is pointing out the importance of repaying the kindness of our mothers or mother. In the 7-point cause and effect practice to cultivate bodhicitta, this is the 4th step. First, we have the practice of equanimity, and then recognizing all sentient beings as our mother or parent, seeing their kindness, or wishing to repay their kindness, love, compassion, and then bodhicitta, the great resolve. So we have to start with the mother of this life. And no matter what kind of experiences we have with our mother, the teachers always instruct us to come back to our own personal mother in this life. And this is an essential point to develop bodhicitta. And from a genuine aspect, why is there so much emphasis on recognizing the kindness of our mother or mothers? Because the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama states, a peaceful world does not occur from prayer, from technology, money, from religion, but from our mother. This is my fundamental belief, he says. He continues, I consider the mother our first teacher in compassion. On my first day of birth, I experienced the mother's compassion. That is the most important part of building a healthy family, and that means healthy humanity. And he explains in another source a bit more in detail. Genuine happiness and satisfaction must come from within. The basic elements for that are compassion and human affection, and these come from biology. As an infant, our survival depends solely on affection. If affection is there, we will feel safe. If it's not there, we will feel anxiety and insecure. If we become separated from our mother, we cry. If we are in our mother's arm and held tight, warmly, then we feel happy and we are quiet. As a baby, this is a biological factor. One scientist, for instance, my teacher, a biologist, told me that after birth, a mother's physical touch for several weeks is important for enlarging the baby's brain and development. It brings a feeling of safety and comfort, and this leads to proper development of physical growth, including the brain. So the seed of compassion and affection is not something that comes from religion, it comes from biology. We each come from our mother's womb, and each of us survived due to our mother's care and affection. I think this too helps us later in our practice of the Buddhist teachings to have trust and confidence in the teachings if we have this kind of foundation. And even so myself, I had some challenges in my early lifehood and some distance to my mother, but reflecting upon her kindness, just carrying me for 9 months and helping me to survive and bringing me to a place where I could survive and develop and strive, that was a great amount of kindness. And this is just a matter of this life. All the merit I've cultivated that brought me, for example, to the point where I am now is due to the kindness also of mothers of previous lives. That could be each of you. And Tenzin Shökyol Nari Rinpoche, the brother of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, states, in the Buddhist sense, in the Buddhist teaching, when all teachings are put together, the whole corpus of Buddhist literature is called the Honorable Mother. Because when we study this, understand this, develop it inside, then you are awakened. So maybe take His Holiness's words and Guru Shavang's words and his brother's words to heart, or repay the kindness of our mother sentient beings of this life, of the past life and future lives, in whatever way possible. Through our prayers or everyday actions and kindness, through showing gratitude, through our devoted practice, whatever is right in front of us. And so to create healthy environments in families, in our communities, in societies, and for our Mother Earth.